So obviously, one of the more fun things about the off season as a whole is we get to talk a lot more about quotes than actual sports. Who doesn't love that? But sometimes we get the really fun quotes where we got a sprinter, an American sprinter, talking about how NBA champions shouldn't be considered world champions, which is pretty interesting to me. I think when I heard that, it kind of got me thinking about it because I don't know if I'd ever actually thought about it like that because the NBA, in a sense, you're right. It's just like the North American thing. Are they world champions? Who knows? But I'm curious what your opinion on that is. Like, do you consider, in any sport really, not only just the NBA, like, do you consider the NFL, like the winner of the Super Bowl, to be the world champions? I think that's the argument that's kind of been passed around. Obviously, we could talk a bit more about the players specifically on whether certain NBA players who have won medals in the Olympics are considered world champions, which is kind of where a lot of people are aiming at, but I don't feel like that's as interesting. I don't think that's where the argument actually is. I think it's more, do you consider a win in like the American leagues, like, you know, the North American Big Four leagues, you know what I mean? Do you consider that a world championship win?
So that's tough. I definitely have an opinion, but I do think it's important to outline like the reasoning as to why you'd think both ways. So,
Yeah.
Noah Lyles' opinion, obviously, like I pulled up the quote. So he said, "World champion of what? The United States? Don't get me wrong. I love the U.S. at times, but that ain't the world. We are the world." Referring to everybody at the where he was competing, the World Athletics Championship. He says, "We almost have every country out here fighting, thriving, putting on their flag to show they are represented. There ain't no flags in the NBA." And I do think they have a point, because it is very, like, speaking as a Canadian, Americans do sometimes have a tendency to make it all about themselves, and I do think that there is a little bit of that when calling, like, the winner of the Super Bowl the world champion or the winner of the NBA. Because, again, it isn't the world. It's like, is Denver really the best basketball city in the world? No. Is Kansas City the best football city in the world? Maybe. I don't know. That's what's so hard to judge, and I do think I do think part of this, I'll get into this later, I am a little bit more on Noah Lyles' side, because I just think that world champion is a different title, and it implies something. It implies international competition, because you can't really, I don't think you can be a world champion without competing against other countries. That's what makes it so different. But from the other side, that is the point to be made, that the NBA or the NFL is not just an American league. There are players, especially in the NBA, like Giannis is from Greece, right? Karl Anthony Towns, well, from the States, represents Dominican Republic in the Olympics and in the FIBA World Cup. Like,
Doncic,
there's all that stuff.
us.
Slovenia.
Where's Doncic from again?
Slovenia. Like, you've got so many players that are from different countries. They're not
the
just all
NBA has
American.
more European stars than ever right now.
Yeah.
Like, more stars from all over the planet. I think when you're making that argument, because you're right, there are two sides, and I will make the two arguments right here, because it's as simple as, are they championship of the world just because they're taking on the best in the world? Is that what that means? Like, what do you define as a world champion, I guess? Do you define that as somebody who wins a medal or wins something for their country? Like, is the best, like, competing against other countries and wins, is that a world champion? Or is it more, do you define it as just beating the best?
Yeah.
Which is a really interesting idea to me. The weird thing is, I remember as a kid, because I'm Canadian, every kid in the world dreams of winning the Stanley Cup, right? Like, the funny thing is, I feel like as a kid, I dreamed more of representing Canada in the Olympics, because that was always so cool to me. Because you obviously, I got to watch Sidney Crosby do it in 2010, and like the 2014 Sochi Olympics as well. Like, all of that stuff was so cool to me as a kid that I thought that was bigger than winning the Stanley Cup, because they're representing their country, which is kind of the other argument there, right? There's something that almost feels more special when you win something that isn't just for you. You're not just winning it personally or winning it for a team or just a city. You're winning it for a whole country. which I always thought as a kid was super cool. So there's that argument too. There's so many parts in it. There's so many parts to that that's super interesting. I think that's why I'm almost on the fence on it, right? Because, like I said, obviously there's the argument that they are taking on the best in the world, and therefore they can be called a world champion because they beat the best in the world, right? But they didn't win it for their country, which is like, I don't know. Like, that's what I mean. I think I'm on the fence. I have a foot on both sides, I guess.
Yeah, and I think I do too. Because it's really, when you get down to it, it's a semantic difference. It's nothing. Yep. It's like you outlined. Does playing against the best players in the world make you a world champion, or just representing your country? And I do think I'm more on the side that representing your country does, not to downplay the accomplishments of the NBA champions or the Super Bowl champions or the World Series champions or anything like that. I'm not doing that to downplay their accomplishments. However, I think when you say world, it is implying that you're getting other countries involved and you're representing where you come from. Whereas NBA champion implies something else. Because again, nobody from the Denver Nuggets is actually from Denver. And I think
True.
when you bring in that world champions title, it kind of implies that you're playing for a place because you're aiming to be the best in the world. So that's where, again, if you want to make the argument that NBA champions are, I'm not going to get too mad about it because I do think it's a semantic difference. Where I do get a little bit mad is these NBA stars that came out against this and are just so butthurt about it. It's like,
That's true.
You are Kevin Durant. You have already won the NBA Finals twice. You have beaten the best players in the world, and everybody knows that. And you're taking time out of your day to, like, trash Noah Lyles on Instagram, like Draymond and
the thing
Aaron
is,
Gordon. It's just like...
I feel like the idea... People are focusing too much on the first part and not the second part. Because I don't think he was trying to undermine what NBA players have done. Yeah. He was trying to bring up the athletes that win these gold medals and these championships, these actual world athletic championships, right?
Yeah.
He was trying to bring that up instead of... Well, and sure, he might have tried to bring down the NBA with it. But I feel like... I don't think that was necessarily his goal. He wasn't shooting for the NBA players, trying to take their livelihood. Like, he was trying to bring up all of these athletes who don't get enough attention for winning these absolutely insane, for just winning in whatever sport they've won in. I think what he was trying to do is very respectable. And I like it a lot. I think it drew a lot of attention to something that I don't know if a lot of people knew it was going on. Yeah. I did, because I remember hearing about I believe her name's Richardson. She broke the 100-meter women's record at it. So that's why I knew it was going on. So I'm sure some people also did. But obviously this quote brought a lot more people's attention to it because you shot at something everybody likes. So you're gonna get the attention you want, which is what he wanted. He wanted to bring the attention in, and he got it.
Yeah,
so
and
I'm not butthurt about it.
I do think that it just sucks that point has been lost because all of these NBA players have gotten butthurt about it. Like, again, you put it perfectly. He wasn't trying to... We don't think he was really trying to attack the NBA as much, and it sucks that it's kind of being taken that way. Another argument that I did think
that the only way anybody would have heard it is if he made an argument like that.
That's
if he just came out... Think about it like this. Like, I'm going to find... 1 second. When you just quote... If he had just started with, "We are the world. We have almost every country out here fighting, thriving, putting on their flag to show what they are represented." Would that have made it anywhere?
No, it definitely wouldn't have. And I think...
No. Because that's how it works.
Yeah. It's true, and again, I do think it is a good point. And one of the to kind of shift it a little bit, one of the other points that you could bring to his side is just how many people know about the sport. So there's a reason that in like soccer or football, like not American football, the World Cup is like, those are the world champions, and it's not anybody who wins like the Premier League or anything like that, because soccer is so universally played and recognized that you have to go international to actually say these are the world champions. I think a point that another point you can say for Noah Lyles is that some of these sports, basketball and baseball less so, but like football especially, it is a little bit one-sided to say that the people on the American teams are the world championships, because you don't know how good anybody else could be if people in Asia
actually
or Europe
other countries.
Yeah, and if it was as brought up, because it depends what you're brought up in, right? I think that can be another one of the points that he makes. Like those sports aren't as international as something like what he's doing, like sprinting or track and field or any one of the Olympic type sports that people are actually like training up and competing at for the purpose of going into international competition. But again,
I just keep going back in my head back to hockey, because I feel like hockey's like the perfect one there. Because sure, basketball's had its European stars, right? But hockey's really had that for sure, maybe like it's still not been a long time. It's probably been like 30 years like that we've really had a lot of European stars coming over. It started with Russians coming over from what's the term? You know what I mean though.
Yeah,
in the late 80s, leaving.
Past the Iron Curtain.
There you go. Yeah, like it started with that, and now we have just a ton of European talent, and it's not just it's still Canadian dominated, but it's not as Canadian dominated as it used to be. And now it's a lot more. I think it almost makes it makes it more fun. I think there is more there. As someone who grew up playing hockey, it's not as simple as, because every time you bring all the NBA players from America to play in the Olympics for basketball, golly gosh, I wonder who's going to win most of the time, right? Like, it's not that, but with hockey, we've seen Canada lose multiple times. Canada lost in the 80s tons because the Russians were nuts. Yeah. Like, they had one of the best hockey teams ever assembled. Like, that makes it a lot more interesting. I think that's, when it comes to stuff like that, I think it really, like, personally, I don't think Stanley Cup does mean world champion. I think that an Olympic medal does.
Yeah.
I on that side, I fall onto that. I definitely, with that, I'm a lot more opinionated on. But when it comes to other sports where it's, I don't know. Maybe I am more on the side of Olympics, and I feel like I maybe agree more with Noah Lyles. The more I think about it, the more I think I agree with Noah Lyles than the other side of the argument. But there's definitely two sides to it. Definitely two sides to it. I think just the way I grew up, just like idolizing the idea of like winning that gold medal for your country, right? Like, because I was obviously in hockey, but also like when I was younger, I used to do long distance running. My dream was making the Olympics and winning a medal. Like even in that, right? Like I think that I just value winning something for your country higher as a real world champion than an actual than just winning the NBA championship. Not devaluing that, obviously, but it's just it has different meaning behind it, I guess.
It does, and I think that's what the Noah Lyles is trying to get at in terms of the distinction for a world champion. And I would agree with it. And I just think the biggest takeaway for me from it all is it really is just semantics. And it's just my biggest I'm not going to be mad either way.
It's a dumb argument.
I'm not going to be mad either way. Argument. But the fact that some of these American NBA stars are coming out and just like going off on it, that's the part that's kind of upsetting to me, because are you really going to get that mad about a semantic difference? I don't know. Like Kevin Durant, you can't go choose to play for another country because they have better players. Like, I don't know.
True. That's true. Yep.
Not that would be much of a problem.
The comment from Aaron Gordon made me laugh, though. That one's funny. Whatever, I'm smoking Buddy in the 200 meter.
Sure, buddy.
That made me laugh when I read that. But it's an interesting. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, it really is, and it's the kind of thing that gets big in the off season. Again, good for Noah Lyles for making the headlines about it. It's an interesting conversation to have, but it's the kind of conversation you have in the off season.
Yep, it's fun. We're having fun out here.